You might careful. YouTube might take you down for that one.
Yeah, that's they haven't taken him down. It would
You
be
know, YouTube
unfair.
takes me down when I play a cover too accurately. They just think that I'm broadcasting music.
They sometimes I sing so identical to the singer when I'm doing some sort of like impersonation or bit on my show that I've had to share revenue with the singer.
Yeah, isn't that wild?
It's super weird. And I'm like, I
10
didn't
Oh,
play
seconds.
I am
them.
streaming today after the show, by the way.
Oh, great. Excellent. 10 seconds. We're starting. Hi, everybody out there. We're live streaming. We're going. We're up.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? And I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
Now, live from Chicago, the Hal Sparks radio program Mega Worldwide.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass.
Hal Sparks, actor, comedian, and multimedia personality.
And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Hal Sparks.
All right, let's do this.
Welcome to week 33 of Donald Trump's Operation Avoid Epstein conversation at all cost, even if it means burning down the Republic. It has never been more clear after the week that we have had and the nonsense that he was selling at Davos. He actually went to the World Economic Forum. I would say the flashpoint of right-wing conspiracy outside of, I guess, the new Charlie Kirk, French Connection, Mossad, Jewish puppet master nonsense that is eating them alive right now. The biggest point of conspiratorial, like the hinge of all conspiracies, was the WEF, was Davos, and was, Klaus Schwab, and this you will own nothing and be happy, and communists are coming for our economic system by infiltrating the Davos crowd, which if you watched the crowd at Davos and you watched the crowd then and now, you know that is remarkably insane considering the wealth and power of the people that go to Davos. And even just like Trump talking about them and going, you're the best people in the world. You're the greatest. You're the most powerful and the most awesome and the most talented and the greatest. And please, some maggot somewhere has to explain to me what their criticism of the elites is again. Does anybody, do they even pretend anymore? I haven't heard a rage against the elites since maybe, I don't know, mid-November, and it feels like it was just a throwback. You know what I mean?
Just anybody who is decent with a polysyllabic word here and there is immediately an elite.
I would like to throw out the point that I didn't not notice this, that Johnny Million used a polysyllabic word
Polysyllabic
to
word.
describe their polysyllabic vocabulary, which is also
It's hard to avoid.
vocabulary is a polysyllabic word, and having a polysyllabic vocabulary means that Johnny
You're
and I
digging yourself deeper, man.
we might as well just
You're
put on
elite.
eyes wide shut masks at this point. Like we're clearly elites. Thanks for outing us, Johnny Million, after all this time. All right, raw, I'm Don Jr. Raw, you're Eric. Just pull our
You
masks
seem like a
off.
nice guy.
Yeah, my father. That's all you have to say. To do a good Eric Trump impersonation, that's really my father. Yeah. Speaking of which, the WEF gathering, by and large, was an attempt for Trump to create a pseudo summit where he could launch his boring company of peace. This board of peace nonsense that he had, like Viktor Orban and the head of the Philippines, Mr. I shoot drug dealers or anyone suspected of drug dealing in the street up
Board
against
of
a wall.
Peace, Department of War, Board of Peace.
Yes,
He
yes.
is Board of Peace.
Yes, he is. The whole thing's very dull because then you have to do actual work. The exciting thing about wartime is nobody expects you to do your homework. To actually handle domestic issues because you couldn't possibly. This is, I mean, I'm busy, okay? So, needless to say, I would argue what is going on in Minneapolis is considered by Stephen Miller a gold mine for this administration, even though word on the street around, his own inner circle is that things have changed, that they have effectively lost the independents for the midterms permanently.
I believe it.
Yeah,
You
I do
can
too.
only get hit with so many bags of urine before you just don't look good.
This is true. Or you can only stand there allowing yourself to be pelted with bags of urine, but before you go, I don't like this guy.
That
And
is no fun at all.
yeah. And in the case of the Republicans' grip on this, I want to. Whoops! Why is my screen all cattywampus? That's very funny. That there is a consensus that the midterms are a big problem for this White House.
Mm-hmm. Even though I thought that the midterms weren't even going to happen.
Well,
I thought they were canceled.
okay, first of all, let me you're going to make people nervous, Johnny Million. You're going to make them very upset because there are a bunch of people, bless their hearts, who think they
Mike
aren't gonna happen.
Johnson's grip.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Right.
It sounds like a 7th Street entry thing.
People don't know that joke. You can't have callbacks to jokes we said off air.
You said it was a privant joke. It's me and you, baby.
I'm wearing my Minneapolis, Minnesota 7th Street entry shirt on the show today for those listening on the radio, out of respect for a city that I love. And Johnny says that sounds like an urban colloquialism for an untoward sex act. And now we got to add Mike Johnson's grip to that. This is not the irony that we can't get yanked off the air for this is amazing to me. That's just, you know what it is? It's that polysyllabic vocabulary trick.
Yeah.
Because most 4-letter words are single syllable. So most of them, depending on how you say them. Of course, if you're from the South, you can stretch those words out. The one that ends in an SH and it ends in a T, or starts in an SH and ends in a T, you can drag that one out to have 3 or 4 if you're from my original part of the country. But this the midterms. This is an article from Axios. The midterms are cracking Mike Johnson's grip on House votes. A couple of things. The states are responsible for carrying out elections. The only hang-up of the federal government is in the counting of said votes. And since this is not an election for president, effectively the right-wingers that would be getting back into office, the ones that aren't quitting like Marjorie Taylor Greene to just go count their money, because she started her campaign with a PPP loan that she used for campaign cash and now is leaving office $20 million richer. Nothing hinky at all. And by the way, getting out right before they pass a law about insider trading, not lost on anybody. Let's understand that one of the best ways you can escape kind of some sort of response from maggots about leaving, one of the biggest ways I would suppose, is to leave and then completely remove yourself from politics to avoid any any comeuppance about this, whatever trading she was doing while she was there, allegedly. Now, that said, this is from the Axios article about him, and the picture that they have is just glorious. The whip Tom Emmer standing behind Mike Johnson, basically doing the nose bridge, oh God, pinch.
Mm-hmm.
Right. House Speaker Mike Johnson's razor-thin majority is colliding head-on with 2026 campaigning, forcing GOP leaders to plead the lawmakers to show up for work. Why it matters. One missed flight, sick day, or campaign stop could flip the outcome of a House vote. It's dicey some days, Johnson told reporters. I told everybody, no risk-taking, take vitamins, stay healthy, and be here. Now, does that sound like a mandate to you, Johnny Million? Does that sound like
They sound
America?
very confident in their position. Not only are their policies popular with the people, the members of the House and Senate are there to represent.
That's right. They can't wait to show up every day and carry out the president's magnificent agenda. Majority Whip Tom Emmer has privately warned members to miss votes only for life or death reasons. While that's long been his posture, the message has taken a more serious tone because it is. The number of Republicans in the House narrowed to 218 following an unexpected resignation of Marjorie Taylor Greene and the sudden death of Doug LaMalfa from California. Democrats hold 213 seats and are set to gain one after the January 31 special election in Texas. And again, that's so at 2014, the discharge petitions get smaller and smaller too. Who you might have to rely on for a discharge petition gets easier. In 2026 alone, there have been a handful of days when so many Republicans were absent that the GOP didn't hold a working majority on the floor. I got to remind everybody, anybody who thinks that I'm here this year to dispel a few myths. One is that Trump ever had a mandate. He did not. That there has not been this flood of Republican idealism that suddenly captured the hearts and minds of the American people. That he has some sort of magical control on MAGA that can withstand anything, because if the Epstein vote has shown us anything, it's that he will eject supporters left and right. And the other myth is that they are some sort of unified front, which the Charlie Kirk murder and a myriad of other little side conspiracies have laid bare over the last couple of months. And like Donald Trump and robots, which is the opposite of robots, this is the best he's ever going to be. When I was at CS, they kept showing all the robots there. They were like, this is the worst they're ever going to be. Like, there's nowhere to go but up, and they're amazing already, and oh my God, and this is going to be nuts. And with Donald Trump, every day gets worse, including a little bit of health news from him. We'll cover that on our return. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, now with 100% more Johnny Million. He's got a live stream after the show at It's Johnny Million on Twitch and YouTube, and we're going to rate it whether he wants us to or not. We'll be back.
Raid.
I got this.
Trucker John said I was a little loud.
Well, that's an emotional reaction that a lot of people have to you, I think. It might be that my mic turned down a touch. Check.
Maybe.
Check 1, check 2, check it
and
3.
Most people in the chat think that we don't know about the second ice shooting.
We know about the second ice shooting. We're covering Minnesota in the second half of the hour because it's a lot. I'm teeing up some things. Let's see. Where was he? Is it this one? That's Jack Smith's Gagor. Yeah. Man, did they just walk into that rake with Jack Smith? Yeah, here it is. Okay, I'll send this.
Yeah.
Like what? Why
don't you tell us what would have happened?
Yeah. Yeah. Come and make the case we wouldn't allow you to make.
Yep.
Unbelievable. And you could tell some of them were very aware as the day went on that this was not a good idea. They tried their best because they were all trying to, either, turd polish or push the toothpaste back in the tube or a combination of the two. But yeah.
50 seconds.
Thank you.
Yeah. Is it iced coffee?
It is iced coffee. Yes, I drove in last night from LA, and I got in. It wasn't like when I do the jam, and it's super late, but it wasn't early either. So, but I'm doing all right. I'm holding it together. I stuck around for the jam for one particular reason. And I'll show you in just 1 second. Or for the NAM.
Welcome back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
So, yesterday at the NAM show, the National Association of Music Makers, one of the reasons why I went down and why I made a special point to go down this year was because they honored my dad. And if you go on the NAM oral tradition site that they have, which is, where they interview people. I played a little bit of on the show yesterday and it broke me in the morning. So sorry I didn't have an afternoon show, everybody, but there was no signal out of there. And I was right about the time I would have probably tried to make a run at it again around 5 o'clock. They got to the S's in the memorial that they did for people who passed. And they posted this about my dad. Famous old-time music company founder, luthier, and banjo lover is how he was listed. Because they ran out of space on his, clearly, they were trying to, he's got too many credits to name in this. But in seeing that and stuff, I talked with a bunch of people, good friends that I ran into there. I got to say, NAMM was more like visiting with like a club full of your friends that just showed up. It was like a high school reunion for people you didn't go to high school with. I ran into people, a lot of people I do the Ultimate Jam Night with who were there, and they're like family. I saw Phil X and talked to him. He's
cool.
Touring with Triumph, and he's touring with Bon Jovi this year. He's got everybody's jealous of him for the 2 greatest gigs in rock right now that you could possibly have as a hired gun. He's a lovely human being, by the way, if you're ever wondering.
Seems like it.
Phil X is a lovely human being. And I got to say hi to him and give him a hug and that kind of stuff. And in talking with these guys, because my dad came up in this, I got to, I've been thinking about a book since my dad passed called Tell Me About Your Dad, where I interview people, friends that have lost their dad and what it was like, for better or worse, and the lessons learned and not learned and all that kind of stuff, because it's important to me. And so anyways, I ended up having conversations like that, really like touching and deep conversations in the middle of dudes trying to show off guitar solos and every drummer in the place trying every kit in the place all at once. And then, of course, the worst, walking past the jazz guys, because jazz has a tendency in some cases to sound like 5 guys playing 5 different songs in the same room at the same time anyways. But when there's all that extra noise, it's particularly dystonic, I will just say. But it was a strange experience to have at a place like that. And what kept coming up was a lot of talk about the last days of spending time with our dads and what we had gone through and the health challenges and all that kind of stuff kept coming up. And that brings me to this. This is an article from the Daily Beast today, but this is something, and you guys know I hate being right all the time. And I pointed something out when his medical records came up. And I dove in, I was like, I know I'm right about this, but I dove into ChatGPT about this. I dove into Gemini about this. I checked my answers 2 ways to Sunday. I went on the American Heart Association's website to check this as well. And because the whole thing about how much aspirin they had him on and how much they were continuing, he was overtaking aspirin. He's saying, I'm taking more than they tell me I should take because I think it's better for me and I want nice thin blood like a lunatic. I said, and people in the chat room will back me up on this. When this news came in, that he was taking all this aspirin, that he was still on an aspirin regimen, I was like, I remember, like when they said cholesterol was not an enzyme or a hormone, an enzyme of concern when it comes to heart disease, the way they thought. It was, it was misread as the biggest marker. They did that in 2015, and yet still we're kind of riding on this noise about check your cholesterol, and it's a totally different series of things. It's a certain specific type. It's not just your LDL and your HDL and whatever. But some people just hum along like with old news medically, and they don't know it's been updated. It's on the like the American Heart Association's website, but it just like people don't catch up to that news for a while. Like the Brussels sprouts will kill you. But anyways, that's another time. I'm just kidding. I was right. I was right when I was 9, and I'm still right. Anyways, so one of the things that they changed in the medical advice a few years ago was suggesting taking aspirin, a daily aspirin dose, for your heart health. That became, I think you can probably remember Johnny Million. Like we started hearing that probably the mid 90s. And
Oh, yeah.
and then
If not before.
Yeah, and then it kind of tapered off. It was like, first it was baby aspirin, and then it was just like a bare aspirin every day or a half of one or whatever. But they were suggesting that people take aspirin every day. And then they realized that was actually over a certain age, that's really damaging. It's not good. And the only reason you should do it is if you have already had a heart attack or stroke. Then your doctor will put you on this. But if you take it, the positives, the negatives outweigh the positives if you haven't already had a stroke. Well, guess what, kids? So these are this is an article in Daily Beast yesterday. These are the physical and mental signs Trump has had a stroke from a doctor. Much about the president's appearance and behavior has changed, and here's why. There is they talk about how they're trained to spot this. And they were talking about, Trump, who is right-handed, is ascending Air Force One using his left hand. He was cradling his right arm at one point. And they've broken this down. He's got reduced inhibition, drooping mouth, slurred speech, Broca's speech area. The left frontal brain is probably damaged by the stroke. Repeated excessive daytime sleepiness. He's got bruised hands, right side weakness, shuffling feet, swollen ankles. This is a cardiac problem and direct signs of a stroke related to that circulation issue.
Why does it make me giggle? I don't feel good. I'm giggling about this.
I know. Yeah. But, I'll tell you why. Because he keeps telling you...
I'm a better person than this.
Because it's a Clouseau moment. One of the things that people don't realize about why Mr. Bean and Clouseau in America, why people don't recognize why they're funny, is because they're both jerks. So when they fall down a flight of stairs or screw up their life terribly or ruin a social experience or whatever they do in the particular joke that they're doing, the reason it's funny is because they had it coming. They're actually not nice people. Clouseau is an egomaniac. If he's just bumbling and forgetful, it doesn't work because he's pitiable in that situation. But he sets himself up, quite literally in terms of the joke, for a fall. And when they tried to make the Mr. Bean movie in America, they tried to make him like this kind of goofy cartoon character because they thought him as like bumbling and likable. And that's not at all who he is. He's conniving, he's self-involved, he's egomaniacal.
He's very selfish.
Yes, exactly. And so when something awful happens to him, it's funny because it's his own fault.
Because he deserves it.
That's right. And that's why people react to Trump's health concerns differently than, say, they react to Joe Biden's. Because Joe Biden has never told anyone he's the most powerful, strongest, healthiest person, and if he never ate junk food, he'd live to be 200 years old, and he has great genes. So not only does he attribute it...
I guess it's why it's like so much more satisfying when you see a really cocky boxer get knocked out.
That's exactly it. A mouthy dude who, takes on somebody and then just gets laid out. It's also, there is an element of Hitlerian eugenics-oriented racism to it, because that's what Trump is talking about when he says he has great genes, where he doesn't have to exercise, he doesn't have to take care of his body because it's just magically better because of German and Scottish blood or something like that. And he believes this. So the failure of it not only carries the weight of what an a-hole he is and how he is so self-congratulatory about all these things, but because he is also stacking the ridiculousness of Hitler being some sort of magically healthy, amazing person, of course, so gacked up on Pervitin, the meth drug of choice for the Nazis, that everybody thought he had Parkinson's. But he goes...
Because he was wiggling so much?
Yeah, because his hand would twitch and all that kind of stuff. And it was literally because of the volume and intensity of stimulants and other chemicals that he was on just to keep him awake. And again, it gets to like the opposite of like Elvis. He was taking, his heart rate was up and his stress and cortisol levels were so high. They were constantly trying to lower that. So it was barbiturates and all that kind of stuff that will slow you down. And that's ultimately why he died on the toilet, because they literally overburdened his heart and then slowed the pace of it. And again, Chris Bono's my favorite Elvis joke of all time. And so the end is near, and now I face the shower curtain. So, but in this article, this suggests a stroke, all these factors in Trump. and that the infarction was on his left side. He garbles words a bit, did so worse earlier, implicating Broca's area, that's the left frontal brain region that's critical to speech and function, as damaged. He has quite noticeably repeated excessive daytime sleepiness, likely from post-stroke sleep disturbance, a common residual effect of stroke. Moreover, we know that Trump's own words that he is swallowing a full aspirin pill, 325 milligrams a day, to thin his blood. Although a prominent physician has stated this is too much aspirin, that physician is wrong when it comes to stroke patients, and Trump is correct. I don't think he's overtaking what his doctors are telling him. I think they're trying to hide the fact that he takes that much from the American people. That's why he said, I take more because I like nice thin blood. I'll explain on the other side of this. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. We're going to talk about Minneapolis as well and the second shooting that occurred and how this is playing straight into Trump's hands. It's what he wants. We'll be back. Yeah, just
hate it.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see this part, but this is the key. This is the AHA. And chat room, work with me. Did I not call it when this first news came out? Did I not mention it? When the news came out that he was taking aspirin as part of his regimen, I was like, that means he had a stroke probably in the last 6 months. And they announced this probably in, I don't know, maybe June. So let's say they have a delay of when they're hiding a piece of news for how long they bring the news out, which means that week after the election, when he was gone for 7 days, that's when I think it happened. And I also don't rule out...
Everybody was just hoping he died.
Right. And I also don't rule out that it happened again. Thank you. That he's had another one. Yeah. Betsy says, my husband takes a full aspirin a day due to his heart attacks. Exactly. And as soon as they said this, I was like, whoops. They told us the truth accidentally. And that's why I think he's lying about taking more. I think that's his cover. And I think his doctor prescribed it. And his people said, don't, it's going to say you take that, say it's because you're just, you're extra cautious. Don't tell people that we prescribed it. Say it was your choice or whatever.
I take it because I like nice things.
Nice. Yes, I like nice thin blood. Yeah, well, to go along with your skin.
This is Tom Hartman, and you're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT.
So, as I said months ago, and everybody, not everybody in my chat room knows that I actually care enough to pay attention to the details here, and I'm not just talking out of my rectum just to make digs at people. And I'm very, I will admit to being sometimes overly cautious in getting my details right about a lot of things, because I don't want to be drawn onto someone else's debate battlefield. I don't want them to hand me a fake piece of information that I take as gospel because it's the standard theme, that everybody is saying, because under real scrutiny, it falls apart, right? That's crucial to me being useful as a purveyor of news and opinion, that it's based on something. But as soon as they said he's taking that much aspirin, and then later on he said he just does it because whatever. The fact that they said he was on a dose of aspirin at all means I was like, I remember years ago when they said don't do that anymore. I remember that being that filed away in my head years ago, as a lot of things do. So mind your manners, Johnny Million, because I'm going to remember this 7th Street entry thing forever.
You remember the 7th Street entry to the grave.
How could you forget? Don't forget. Okay, so The American Heart, in case anybody is curious about this, doesn't know, the American Heart Association's 2021 stroke guidelines recommend a full 325 milligram aspirin pill to prevent recurrent stroke after a stroke. And by the way, of course, these guidelines could have inspired a song in the 80s from Billy Squier, but they did not. It is not, and this is the key part, it is not recommended for primary stroke prevention, heart disease, peripheral arterial disease, chronic venous insufficiency, or even temporary, I suppose, or other venous disease, only for large intracranial vessel partial occlusion after a stroke. It is singularly used for stroke patients to stave off further strokes. That's the only way they will okay you taking 325 milligram aspirin on a daily regimen. It's the only reason to specifically. It's not even for like you take a lower dose for like to prevent heart attacks and the like, but for stroke in particular, that's what this is. This is. His exact dose is for someone who has already had a stroke and his doctors are trying to prevent another one.
Okay.
And I got to tell you something, kids. That's if he takes it like he's supposed to. Now, regarding the White House reports, Trump had an MRI, which was then changed to a CT scan of the chest and abdomen, which we're told had fine results. But an MRI is not for examining the chest or abdomen. We use CT scans for that. MRIs are used for bony structures like spine and joints, and particularly to provide detail of the brain. So let me just call it right here. Trump had an MRI, but people know what an MRI is for, so the White House changed its story. He let it slip in the same way that he let it slip that he's taking 325 milligrams of aspirin. And somebody went, no, you can't tell them that because they'll think you've had a stroke because we told you to take it. So that's when he went on and went, I just do it because I like thin blood. He's lying. Get used to the idea. He's always been a liar. He will continue to be a liar. And now
I'm pretty used to it, I got to admit.
Yeah. He is now taking this, the salesmanship that made him, pass off, these dumps that pass for fancy high rises that he has that smell like manure and have rat problems and all that kind of stuff as like the finest buildings in the world with the Trump brand all over them. Again, you don't have to be the greatest salesman in the world if your product doesn't suck. Right? I mean, Johnny, you and I have some music gear and we didn't have to be pushed or we sought it out because the company had a good reputation, that we tested it for ourselves, played through it, and you're like, wow, this is amazing. That's why you do it. Yep. It's worth your investment, and nobody had to bug you. Like, one of the annoying things about Guitar Center was always that there's this guy hovering because they get a piece of the sales. They are not there to convince you. They're there to go, hey, I'm Doug. If you need anything, put my name on the list so I get a little piece of having sold it. But you're sold before you walk in the door most of the time. Because the products are good, because you want something specific. You do not have to be the greatest salesman in the world to sell something worthwhile. But you do to convince a section of maggotum that you are the healthiest person in the world when your chest looks like something that only B. Arthur's gynecologist would see.
I thought I had crepey skin, but holy guacamole. Yeah.
And there's the bruise on his hand that's seen at the WEF gathering on his left hand. His teensy-tiny, I might add, little left hand.
That's one he gets from shaking hands with his left hand the way he does all the time.
Well, for the kinds of deals he does, the satanic ones, I think you do shake left-handed, don't you? Because the left is sinister.
Sure.
By the way, my sister and my son are both left-handed. Also, my cousin, I'm ambidextrous. You're welcome. And annoyingly, I can use...
Devils all ya.
Yeah, absolutely. I cannot be trusted at all. I'm the worst. A left-handed person apparently was terrible back in the day. That's where, all the à gauche, to be gauche in
So what's
French.
it when you can do both amphibious?
Yes, that's right. Yes, I have gills.
Okay.
Yeah, and I can breathe on land. But I can, annoyingly, I can eat with chopsticks with both hands. And whenever somebody's trying to learn it at the table, when I'm at some place, dink, I'll grab both of them and start going, it's like this. And they're like, I hate you. So this is key. And I need people to know this. We have, Adam Allen on the show, Doc Adam, as I like to call him. And he has been talking about Trump having somewhere between 3 to 5 months to live. We are counting down. We're now at 3 or 4 months to live. Now, I personally think Walter Reed and all kinds of stuff can extend that number in a way that the average person in hospice or in home care or in an old folks home cannot, right? He's getting daily infusions of vitamins and all kinds of stuff to make up for every other day, to make up for, his crap diet, his lack of exercise, and the general wasting that he's going through as a human being that is genetic and obviously timing out exactly the way it did with his father. But that's it. It's the question that, Mike John, I would argue there is probably a thing about the midterms that the story will be the king is dead, long live the king. J.D. Vance is going to be sworn in before too long because Trump is in the hospital or something like that. And if you don't give us the House and help us keep the House and Senate, his legacy will die with him. That's going to be the sales pitch when and if this happens. That's it. I'm telling you. Right. I'm telling you this right now. The problem they have is, and I'm calling, my number is 8 to 12% of maggots are just going to go home. Of the hardcore, count on it voters that pushed him over the top in very crucial areas, beyond the Elon Musk help that they're getting financially and the like. They're going to just go home. They're not going to vote for J.D. Vance. They don't like his brown wife. They don't like the fact that he's, let's just say, in their estimation, Lindsey Graham adjacent, as it were. And that's the belief. I'm not even calling that. That is floating around MAGA media circles like crazy. This is going to be this is just headed in one direction, everybody. And one of the reasons they are trying to jumpstart all this stuff and why they're trying to, bum rush all of his agenda as fast as possible, and why they're cramming, like he's never been busier in the White House. It's meeting and it's all on camera because it's the only way they can get him to work. If he has to do work, we've got a meeting and it's on camera and you're going to talk to the press and they're going to ask you questions because it's the one thing that, for lack of a better phrase, invigorates him about the job. Right. Yelling at the press, selling and BSing people, convincing people that the greatest people in the world want to be around him, which is a very crucial part of his talking points over the last 3 months. And that's why for the first time in his life, he has played up the greatness of other people. You people are the most talented people in the world at the WEF. The oil meeting where he got up and went to the window to break wind. He was saying these are the most powerful, richest people in the world. All that stuff, right? This is a relatively new thing. And part of it is him trying to invigorate himself, remind himself that he has value and therefore has reason to go on or do the job itself. Like, these people are downstairs. They want to meet with you. These are the greatest people, Mr. President, and they can't wait to meet with you, sir. That's what he's selling, not just to the American people, but to himself. This is incredibly crucial because it has a lot to do with what happened in Minnesota, what happened in with him claiming to, this new board of peace nonsense that he's been selling, that he wants to be seen as the Prince of Peace. If they can fly him to Israel and take him to the Temple Mount, he will declare himself God on earth like Timu Antichrist and try to convince, and basically check all the boxes of the Antichrist before he can, because that's what I guess his people around him want him to ultimately do. Because you could tie all these things together. He's immediate. He checks all the Antichrist boxes, and they think that's kind of cool. I'm not kidding. It really, like, Stephen Miller thinks the fact that he checks those things is awesome. Because I mean, there's no way. By the way, for the record, that's why I call him Timu Antichrist. There's no way he's the Antichrist, because the Antichrist would be, in theory, anyways, charming above all humans. That's why they thought Obama was actually the Antichrist. The right actually thought Obama was, because he's good looking and charming and well spoken and charismatic, and everybody liked being around him, and people, celebrities and all these other people wanted to be near him because he seemed friendly and kind and all this. And they were convinced he was going to declare himself God and start a one world government, all that stuff, all that Alex Jones tangent stuff. And now Alex Jones is just campaigning for the midterms for the right. That's the gig. We got to take a break. When we come back, we're going to deal with Minneapolis. And also, I don't know if Phil is joining us this morning because, again, they have weather and power issues there, but he is fine. I want everybody to know he's alive and well, and he's all right. But it's difficult for them to just reach out to us right now because it's particularly bad there. Not like Trump cares or the leadership cares, because that's who the American people chose this time around. Weird. Or by not showing up. Yep, we'll be back. Mm-hmm. Okay, hold on one second. This is very this is yeah. Hold on. Okay, hold on one second. Where are you? There we go.
60 seconds, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This is Damian Perdue of Think Theory Radio, Saturdays at 6 p.m. You're listening to Hal Sparks' radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Okay, I don't know, Johnny Million, if you have seen over the last little bit that one of the ways that they are justifying, they had a press conference in Minneapolis. There's been another shooting in Minneapolis of someone that was somehow interacting with ICE. I won't even say that they were, and we don't, like, I don't know the details of whether it was an immigrant or a citizen, but somebody who was being detained or whatever, and then that person ended up dead. And the Minneapolis police chief said, ICE told the local police to leave the area. They refused, and they are preserving the scene because it's a crime scene, as they should. But one of the reasons that the White House is trying to justify the outrageous and unnecessary pushes of these 100 agents to come in and get people out of these areas is because they're child molesters and murderers and killers, and we're trying to get these people off the streets of America. And I'm going to give you some example of people like that. They've been, I don't know if you've seen them hold up these pictures. Trump even did it at his thing, like this terrible person and this terrible person, holding up these little posters. Okay, let me give you an example of some folks. Andre Mendoza Solomon, who's from Mexico. He was convicted with lewd acts with a child under 14, indecent exposure and contact with a minor with sexual intent. Oscar Arturo Sanchez Mondragon from Mexico was convicted of second-degree manslaughter and evidence tampering in Kentucky. Miguel Antonio Arias Argueda, weapons possession, attempted assault, and attempted murder in New York. Miriam Corona Medina in Mexico, convicted of vehicular homicide under the influence in Nevada. Higinio Rodriguez Ramirez in Mexico, convicted of burglary of a habitation in Texas. They have, they always cite these worst of the worst cases of people that they go after. The people that I named in that list, though, were removed under the Biden administration. The Biden administration managed to do this without sending in hundreds of agents or threatening the National Guard. They did the constant gardening of a country with this many people in it that has immigration as a struggle because of the bill that wasn't passed that Biden and Democrats and Republicans worked together on, the comprehensive immigration policy that's been sitting on leader of the Senate's desk, knowing they couldn't get full votes on it since 2002, I think was the most recent big draft of that. Most of what was in the Republican and Democratic bill that Biden came up with was passed in the Trump big BS bill, specifically because you do need fundings. When Trump and all these guys say we didn't need a new policy, we need a new president. We didn't need a new bill or a new law. We needed a new president. Well, that new president needed a law because that's how you pay for these things. That's how you pay for extra border security. That's how you pay the people who stand there. They don't just do it as a hobby. And the technology needed to secure the border and all that kind of stuff. And all of those upgrades have been in some form or another unable to pass, largely because of Republicans wanting like absolute draconian sweeping as part of the thing. And this is where the Republicans fall into that Young Turks nonsense. If we don't get everything, nobody gets anything, which is what has stalled immigration reform for a very long time. But specifically, the people that I listed are equal to, as far as being awful, the people that Trump keeps bringing up, and equal in number. That's the other key. The number of people that Trump is beating his chest about, look at these people we're catching, is equal to, supposedly there were 35 million people across the border during the Biden administration, but there's still the same number of people in general that are these kind of people that need to be removed from because they're a danger to the community. But according to Trump, everybody who came, all 35 million, were dumped out of an insane asylum or a mental hospital or jail or both or whatever. They were emptying out their jails and sending them up here, and they were emptying out their mental institutions and sending them up there. And yet, the number of criminally dangerous, heinous criminals that are being removed by the Trump administration are equal to, or specifically, less than the Biden and Obama administrations managed to do. With the same group, with ICE, using the same tools at their disposal, the Biden administration and the Obama administration were more effective at removing these criminal aliens, the ones that sneak in on the regular and do terrible things because they come here for that specific reason or whatever, or they hide inside a group of simple migrant workers or people looking to just escape a bad country or a bad life, who try to come here, undocumented, illegal, however you want to break the law to get into the country so that they can have a better life. And in and amongst them, like any group, and even I would argue to a smaller extent than other herds of human beings, think Charlotte, think Jan 6, the percentage of them that are doing these kind of things is very small, and it has not changed. The percentage is equal, And the Biden and Obama administration managed to do this without raiding communities, without storming into houses and yanking 5-year-olds out of their parents' arms. So is it ICE that's the problem, or is it Donald Trump? Is it the House Republicans that support this kind of stuff and put no guardrails? Is it simply that we have immigrations and customs enforcement in this country like every country on the planet has? Or does it matter who's in charge? Because I can't stress this enough. The Biden and Obama administration were more efficient at getting these people out. They were more targeted. They worked with sanctuary cities because they knew that in a lot of cases, people will be afraid to come forward if they are here undocumented, if they have been sexually assaulted or abused, especially in a domestic violence setting. They'll be afraid to come forward if it means the whole family gets swept up. So the witnesses don't come forward. The victims don't come forward. And then you have this person walking around, never charged, never found, never on the radar because they are operating basically under the table, just like the under the table immigration economy. And so I can't stress this enough. That list of people sounds exactly like the list of people that Trump is holding up. The difference is that the Biden administration didn't tout this and hold up posters of people like they're, the Polk County sheriff in Florida who, names and shames criminals on the regular. That's where they borrowed this from. The reason I wrote the song Florida Man was because Trump's from there and he's clearly one. But also, the reason we think of Florida Man as as an example of the most egregious and ridiculous criminals is because they have a sunshine law. They have a law that says if you get arrested for something and convicted or tried, or you're being kept for this, they can hold up a picture of you and go, "We busted this person for this crime," and they put it in the newspaper. That was what they did for a long time. And now, the Polk County sheriff just names them in a regular press conference to remind people who they got off the street and to let people know this person was walking around. This person's no longer walking around. Which you can argue, if the person is later found innocent, might be a wreck of their reputation that they don't recover from. But in most cases, they're not even talking about those people that are on the fringe of it. They're holding up the obviously egregious criminals. And so I would say the Matt Gaetz's, like, he never did it with Joel Greenberg. That's the example I would give. Matt Gaetz's running buddy who helped him create fake IDs for underage girls so that they could drug them and fly them to Georgia and to the Bahamas. Okay, Joel Greenberg had access to the ID printers at the DMV and could make fake IDs for these underage girls that made them over. And he didn't even sell them. They used them against these girls. They used them as a way of convincing other people these girls were of age and were just drunk on the plane. Here's her ID, she's asleep. He was never on there. Now, he was convicted. Matt Gaetz is as culpable in everything that he did. But he won't be named and shamed by the Polk County sheriff. They hold up a specific financial tier of criminal and a specific group of criminals, mostly sex offenders who are caught in sweeps, or people who are in human trafficking or specifically selling drugs, and only really not the ones that sell them at nice parties at Mar-a-Lago, but that sell them near a playground or something like that. So they can seem like they're that they're doing the whole job by showing half the job. Now, and again, the people that they're showing most of the time deserve it. They're terrible people. But the point is, the only reason you know about Florida Man is because of that policy. That's what that is. So the Trump administration has taken that policy and is using it as a PR stunt. And they're doing exactly the same thing. There is no way that, in the same way that I think the Polk County sheriff does it in kind of an accidental way. He's not talking about white collar criminals that get busted, because that's not his area. That would be federal and other stuff. And he just leaves it alone because you'll upset the apple cart. But in the case of the Trump administration, they are picking and choosing. There's no way the Epstein co-conspirators are going to end up there. I think that's Phil calling in. That's excellent. Let's take a break. We'll be back right after this.
Yay.
It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. Okay.
I will be right back.
No, you won't.
Make sure I've got a window with Phil.
What do you mean, where you're both on screen at the same time? So you can
Yes, please.
Reach across? All right. Let's see this real quick. There he is. Good.
We both got our toques on.
How Canadian of you. Think there it is. Yeah. There's a great Canadian band called Toque. I don't know if you know this.
No, I did not.
Yeah, it's Todd Kearns, who is when I moved to Canada to do Queer as Folk, I was very lonely because I didn't know anybody, and I liked my cast, of course. But when they went out for the evening, they liked to drink and go clubbing, and in some cases, smoke a little something, as it were. Which in Canada was legal at the time and all that stuff. And I just don't partake. So what was I going to do, right? I'm not going to sit around and be the teetotaler sitting in a corner watching everybody fall apart going, I'm going to be in charge of calling cabs for the night. And so I decided I love Canadian music, Triumph, Rush, all these other bands. So I'm going to start seeing live music. So I went down to the CD store on Yonge Street. And and all the Canadian music's in the front. They make a point of like selling Canadian music first. And I just went right to the rock section and they have these little placards that read like who the band is, who's in it and all this stuff and where they were raised in Canada. It's hilarious. Little ads. And I just started pulling bands that sounded cool. Like Danko Jones, who, it says, I want to say he's half Filipino. I don't want to mix it up, but he's like 6'6". And half Filipino. It's an amazing mix of a human being. Super talented, three piece. And it said, if Kiss and AC/DC had a baby while taking LSD, it would be, smoking hash, it would be Danko Jones. And I was like, I will take all of these. This is my new favorite music. And then one of the other bands was this band Static and Stereo, which I saw the videos for on their Much Music channel, and I just fell in love with it immediately. The lead guy in it is this guy Todd Kearns. He's in Slash's band, sings like a bird, plays like a maniac, is one of the best songwriters ever, just a sweetheart. And I'm now friends with him, which is really nice after all this time. But I was like, first, I'm going to go see bands live, and I couldn't believe it. Went and saw them and like Nickelback and Danko Jones and like live. And they were all awesome, just caring about it. And the best thing was the audience. In LA, everybody's got their arms crossed and they're like, oh, this is kind of cool or whatever. And Canadians are like, I'm so happy to be alive at every show. And I was like, I love these people. They're my brethren. And anyways, so Todd is now playing with Rick Emmett and Triumph. He's now going to tour with Triumph is touring again. And so is Phil X. And so we will be going to that business. I forgot what got me on the rant in the first place. Oh, Toque, right. So Todd has a band, a cover band that is like, what's that? Like whatever it's called, Sammy's Garage or something like that. There's like this, Hollywood Vampires or whatever that Johnny Depp is in. It's like this all-star corporate band where they just do these like $1 million gigs. It's him and Slash and a couple other people, that kind of thing. Toque is the Canadian version of that. Right, all the Canadian all-stars playing around, and they track the live shows and stuff at Bryan Adams' studio, which is where everybody tracks. Like everybody goes to Bryan Adams' home studio, which is this giant, amazing place.
Come back.
So
I don't see Phil on the screen.
Oh, that's right. Hold on 1 second.
You're listening to the
How about now?
Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I've had people walk out of me before, but not when I was being so charming.
Video streaming at HalSparks.com.
I don't care for you or for the putrid slut you're troweling out.
Puss-faced little pimp stick.
True progressive talk.
Might be a good time for you guys to give up.
I'm really glad Philip Bittner is joining us from Kyiv right now with our good friend Johnny Million as well. And to our listeners out there, like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff on all of our channels. If you're on YouTube, infotainmentwars.com, subscribe there. Subscribe to It's Johnny Million and subscribe to On the Edge, which is Phil's show on the regular. It's hard for them to put out new episodes because they're in the middle of a snowstorm and bombing and a campaign by the Russians to effectively terrorize the civilian population and arguably genocide them by freezing them to death. This is the goal of the Russians. They have stated it openly. And I think the scariest part is that Trump's White House seems to be taking a lot of their cues, not from Hitler, as most people will say, because I don't think they know enough about Hitler and history in general that they know how this works, but from Vladimir Putin himself. That Trump clearly, idolizes dictators. He idolizes people who have managed to stay in power. And there are a lot of similarities to these crackdowns we're seeing in Minneapolis and these crackdowns that, he is threatening, that have a lot to do with what Vladimir Putin has done over time and what Xi Jinping is doing right now in China. And we'll talk about that a little bit. But when Phil, I know you know a little bit about the power structure and sort of the system of like Putin changing places with Medvedev and shipping back and forth to try and keep that going, and how he came to power with that apartment bombing. Can you catch people up on kind of a little bit of history of like how Putin has maintained power over this time?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, he did rise to power on the back of the apartment bombings in Moscow in 1999.
Right.
Which he and his kind of his what are called the Silovaki, the strongmen. He and his cadre of strongmen wanted to restart the war in Chechnya. Yeltsin had lost the first war. They'd made an agreement. Chechnya had special status and was semi-autonomous. But that was a massive embarrassment for Moscow. So when they were rising Putin up, when Putin was rising himself, but also with the help of a lot of very powerful people in Russia, one of the things that he did was to reinitiate the war in Chechnya, what is often referred to as the Second War in Chechnya. And this is when there were a lot of, look, I'm going to speak frankly here. There were false flags all over the place in Russia. And I say that with conviction because I actually was in Moscow when the apartment bombings happened. And I went, after they happened, we went around and we spoke to neighbors and interviewed them about what was it like to be there when the explosion happened and all this other stuff. And what we found was a story that we didn't uncover, but we explored, was the fact that about a week before the bombings in 99, which killed 200 some odd people, I want to say, that there had been a similar incident with a lot of guys showing up with very suspicious sacks of like fertilizer, quote unquote.
Right.
And the police were called. They were told, the residents were told it was an exercise. Nothing happened. A week, 10 days later, the apartment bombing goes off, which is the primary excuse that Putin uses to restart the Chechen war in a much more brutal way. And he puts down an independent Chechnya with the help of warlords like, we still have
Ramzan
Kadyrov as a result of this kind of period when he got a bunch of real nasty guys and he let them off their leash and they killed all the other Chechens.
Right.
Anyhow, that's how the apartment bombings, the Second Chechen War, this is how Putin rises to power. And this is why I've been watching Putin for 25 plus years now, because I saw who this guy was, and many of us who were in Moscow at the time saw who this guy was, and he was rising to power through these kind of very nefarious way. I mean, this is like the using the example of Hitler is always dangerous, but it was Kristallnacht.
Yeah,
it was. They went through a period where they said we are at risk from the Chechens. We need to start the Second Chechen War, and oh, by the way, we also need to curtail a whole bunch of freedoms and liberties that you had hoped to gain after the fall of the Soviet Union. So that's that period, and then you're right. I was also in Moscow many years later when. Because of the Russian Constitution, a president is only supposed to have 2 terms.
Right.
What Putin did was say 2 consecutive terms.
Right.
If they're non-consecutive, which sounds very similar to some of the rhetoric we hear out of the Trump administration.
Yep.
Exactly. It's almost textbook from Putin, because that's what he did. He said the Russian Constitution does not stipulate that the 2 terms, if they're not consecutive, that you can come back in. So he put a puppet in the form of Dmitry Medvedev as president, and he stayed on as prime minister.
Right.
And everybody knew in Russia that he was the guy who the real boss was.
Right.
And then we had, after 2 terms of Medvedev, Putin comes back, and in that process, he also changes the Constitution to say that there are no term limits. So he comes back to power. This is when Alexander Navalny rises to prominence, because there is an outcry in Moscow, and there are these biggest protests they've had in a post-Soviet era. They were called the White Ribbon protests, and I was there for those, and I saw those, and they were put down violently. Like, I mean, they're all protests is put down violently in Russia, but these were cracking heads and vans pulling up with guys in riot gear and truncheons, and they just
also sounds familiar.
Also sounds familiar. And so the point is worth making that it really, Trump does seem, and the Trump administration does seem to be taking pages out of Putin's book almost word for word. I mean, it's almost literally the same thing that Putin did.
Yeah.
But that was in a quote unquote democracy that had existed for maybe a decade. What Trump is trying to unravel is, ostensibly 250 years old. So, look, I'm watching what happens in Minneapolis and Maine and all around the country. And of course, being a Michigander, we got a very purple element, a very red element in Michigan. So it just seems to me that a lot of what we're seeing in America is almost
there seems to be
a dark mirror image.
Yeah, and there's like an intoxication with this might makes right ideal of Russia. I mean, we've seen multiple monologues from Tucker Carlson over the last couple of weeks that were cribbed directly from Kremlin talking points, seemingly given to him specifically so that they could use clips of it of like, see, Americans are on our side. Especially conservative Americans on 60 Minutes or the Solovyev Show or whatever. Meanwhile,
they went crazy. They went crazy for Trump's speech in Davos.
Right.
They were like, "Yeah, exactly. That's what we need to hear from the Trump administration is destroy Europe.
Right.
Destroy the transatlantic relationship. Break up the European Union." This is, honey. This is manna from heaven,
right,
for Putin, because that's exactly what he wants. And I say that again, also with a lot of years of study of this region, because actually, this is a battle plan that was put out by a certain sector, and I don't want to give too much credence to Alexander Dugin because Dugin he's not as significant as we kind of make him in the West.
Right.
He's a bit of a clown.
Right.
And the Russians know it, but
It's like
there is
Medvedev.
a strata.
Same thing.
Yeah, or there was a guy, Vladimir Wolfovich. What was Vladimir's last name? He was a nutter. Zhirinovsky.
No, sorry.
No, Zhirinovsky. Zhirinovsky. He was this kind of clown that was in the parliament in Russia. But occasionally, because he was seen as a clown, he could say things that, the powers that be wanted to kind of be put out there. Anyhow,
Right.
So let's not put too much power to Dugin.
Sure.
But Dugin did put out a treatise in the early 2000s in which he said, first thing we need to do is we need to break Britain off from Europe because Britain has the special relationship and the transatlantic relationship is no stronger anywhere except, save between Britain and America. Well, what happens? Brexit. And then a few years later, we get, Trump. And the Russians openly put out their battle plan. And if they weren't part of it, then boy, it did.
It was magically lucky. Right.
Magically lucky. Exactly.
Providence. Well, no, again, the question is, are the dominoes falling in the direction you want them to? And at the end of the dominoes, is there a detonator or a catapult that blows up in your face? There are a lot of situations where it looks like it's working in your favor, and then ultimately it reverses on you. Let's take a break. We'll come back. I know we're going to have questions. Everybody's glad to see you, by the way, and knowing that you're healthy and safe. We're going to talk a little bit about how during the talks, even during the WEF, or where Zelensky and those guys were talking about stuff, and Trump was, making a speech. Russia hit, I think, something like 300 plus drones inside of the civilian areas of Ukraine.
Yeah, we got a shellacking last night.
While Trump is saying their talks are going on amazingly well, and I think we're making progress. Ridiculous. We'll be back.
Yeah, you may have seen me taking my earpiece out. We just had an announcement that we've been under an air raid alert for the last hour, and they just lifted it, which is good.
Yeah. For a little bit.
And I had for a little bit. No, they'll come back. They'll come back. Tonight's going to be rough. Last night was crazy. Last night was absolutely crazy.
Right.
But they're coming back tonight again, or at least that's what we're being told. So they're going to get another wave of missiles and drones. So, we. But anyhow, I had a little bit of power today. That was good. I got all my batteries charged up.
Yay!
Good start.
Yeah. Yeah, good start. And there's something else I should mention when we're on the air.
Okay.
But there's personally in my sphere, there might be some improvements coming real soon. So we'll always talk about that on the air because it's actually something people can take part in.
Right. Great.
I'm working with Lev Parnas and Malcolm and I are
great.
involved
Okay.
in some stuff.
Cool. And I have a couple of news points that I want to bring up as well, in and amongst the questions, Johnny, if we're gathering those.
I got a couple so far.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, last night. Oof. But there you sit there in bed, and it's freezing outside, so you just kind of sit there and go.
Thank you, Chicago.
Whatever's going to happen is going to happen.
Yep. Hold on one second.
Yeah, it's crazy cold.
Welcome back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
So welcome back. We're going to take questions from the chat room. We're on Facebook at the Hal Sparks page. We're on Instagram. If you're on there, let us know in the chat room. We're on YouTube. We're even on Rumble, where maggots gather. I think we have all of 3 viewers at any given time. I'm sure people breeze by and go, oh, damn. He's telling the truth. Got to move on. But so if you're on any of those sites, if you're on Twitch especially, Hype Train would be useful. Any way you can support the show is great, and we appreciate it, even if it's just to subscribe on your favorite channel of choice. That said, Russia is evacuating its personnel from Iran right now. There's been a lot of talk about our carriers being in the area, and that Trump, while he's playing, I made peace and I like the Iranian regime back and forth, that it just may be stuff that's out of his hands, that this is a decision that has already been made, even if a long time ago, whether it's just PNAC getting another bite at the apple through the Heritage Foundation and Project 2025 and all that nonsense. But they are removing their people, which is an extraordinary measure. Now, Russia doesn't have as many people to spare as it used to, and that might be partially why as well. This gives them a good excuse to get their people out and move them to areas where they need them. Same thing with Africa. They've been pulling out of certain areas. The only people that are still in Sudan, for example, are just Wagner guys there extracting gold while the fighting goes on. And they don't care about whether it's the Sudanese army or the RSF. They're shooting at everybody just to get those trucks of gold out. This is, part of the plan. I would not doubt if they were splitting some of it with China as a way of evacuating it, that this is a dual use plan. They get they give the Chinese a portion of it. Ultimately, it doesn't matter because it's a pretty rock they have no real use for, and it's not like, they guess that it's a way they can move around and avoid sanctions for those that still value gold. But it's a concern by the Russians that a wider war in that area is about to begin, that Trump is actually going to order, or the order has already been given at some point, to carry out a strike against Iran on either on behalf of Israel or on behalf of the United States or on behalf of Stephen Miller, who knows. But the problem they have is the civilian areas. There's still a difficulty because a lot of the Iranian regime is entrenched in civilian areas. A lot of their military bases are inside. And it's like you could strike, the seat of power in the United States would be Washington or whatever. But if the Pentagon was in Denver or something like that, it makes it a little harder to justify the strike on the wider area. Russia doesn't seem to have that problem most of the time when they do these kind of strikes, but you can understand why they'd be afraid. It's a major step forward. And also, under the table, I guess on the down low, Trump has agreed to give more Patriot missiles to Ukraine. Now, ultimately, he agreed, this is what really happened. He agreed not to sign the paper that he has to sign as president because Congress and the Senate specifically already allocated those things to go out on a timeline, and he's not going to run interference on it because I would like to think it's because he knows the value of them, but I think it would be another pointless fight that he would have outwardly, and he would have to sign more. He'd have to do more work that's not in front of the camera, and he just is not doing any work that he can't film right now. It's just it. He's, the House doesn't have the votes to curtail any of this stuff or to try to draw it back, and they know it. And Trump just can't be bothered to do anything presidential that doesn't buy him a news cycle. And this wouldn't work right now. It would seem like it's Marjorie Taylor Greene's fight, not his anymore. As a matter of fact, I think Marjorie Taylor Greene's anti-Ukraine fight and the fact that she is, stepped down and became a pariah is one of the best things that's ever happened to Ukraine, because Trump doesn't want to be seen siding with her or the likes of her on any front, because there's an overlap in the Epstein file release and support and being against Ukraine, which is a curious thing.
And I also think with the shellacking that we're getting, while at the same time there are supposed peace talks with Witkoff and the Russians, the Ukrainians, and the Americans are all down in the UAE. And they're saying, even the Ukrainian side is coming out and saying, we're making progress and, we're getting closer. I think the Ukrainians would say that regardless because they want to stay in the White House's good graces. I am still very skeptical about an actual ceasefire or a peace deal happening. Russia, just Putin in particular, but Russia in general, they can't stop the war now. They're not like this, not the way things are standing. So they're caught between a rock and a hard place. So I'll believe it when I see it.
Sure.
But to have those talks happening, which of course Trump wants to say, look at all the success I'm having in resolving this major conflict. While at the same time, we are seeing some of the largest barrages of Russian missiles coming down on this city during the entire war. In the last month, it's just been
brutal,
constant, and it has been absolutely brutal. And last night was no different. Last night here in Kiev, it was just a nightmare. It was, constant air defense, explosions, but you're caught in an Arctic environment, and it's running for shelter puts you into exposes you to the environment, exposes you to the elements. And we're already starting to get reports of people dying of hypothermia in Kiev,
which is the goal,
which is exactly what Russia wants. But we're starting to get numbers, very early days yet, but I think the last number I saw was 3 dead of hypothermia, and something like 12 people, in hospital with extreme, frostbite or what have you. So you can't just go running out into the elements to get away from the bombing, to get, to run to a shelter necessarily, because even that is, you're going through Arctic temperatures, and you have to, what do you throw on clothes? You gotta, I sleep because of the lack of heat. I sleep pretty much as you see me now, with a woolen hat and some and a fleece and undercovers and things like that, because it's a double whammy. We're getting hit by Russian missiles, and we're also getting these incredibly harsh weather conditions. So so for Trump to sit there and say we're making progress with peace, and yet Kiev is on the brink of a real humanitarian crisis. Many thousands of people are fleeing the city already, because they can't live without electricity or heat. It's just too cold. So they're going off to family homes in kind of rural areas where maybe the electrical grid isn't so badly hit. But the mayor himself is saying, if you can get out of town, get out of town. So for Trump, the point is, from an American perspective, these two things, we're on the verge of peace, and it's because of me and Witkoff and all of our team, and then at the same time to have people dying of hypothermia in the Capitol. These two things, don't really go together. So I think there's a possibility that they're trying to manipulate the narrative there, because, not because Trump really wants to give aid or help to Ukraine, but because he's got to be seen to,
be in charge,
be resolving this. Exactly.
or still even have a say in it, because that's important to his his image in the world as this, the leader of the free world, which is more of a, something that should have a TM on the end of it, like Fox's fair and balanced. It's not true at all, but it becomes the phrase that he wants to sell. We only got about a minute left. Is there a quick question? I guess not. Let's tell you what. Hold the question till we're on to the next break.
Quick.
There's a Russian. There's a phrase that I saw, like a blogger was using about the Ukrainians, that he goes to the basement to laugh, which is I won't even try to butcher it in German, but the idea is that Ukrainians are. It's in this article called "Ukrainians are unbreakable," and it literally is, or the Ukrainians are impossible to defeat, is the name of the article, and it talks about the fact that they are getting through this because they know they're on the right side of it, and they care about how this turns out in a way that the Russians just don't. By and large, Putin might care about this more than anything, but the Russians in general do not. And the only thing that he knows they care about is that if this ends obviously and poorly and shortly, he'll never recover from it, and he knows it. It will show how weak he is. We'll be back right after this. It's Trump's fear too. We'll be back right after this. This is the article. Ukrainians are impossible to defeat. He goes there, and they put it this way: there are 4 Mondays left until spring. I read this a few days ago on Facebook. Ukrainians are really looking forward to spring. She knows about it and will definitely come. Then it will come easier, but it's very difficult for Ukraine. But those in the rear are trying to support those in the front. A female volunteer with 2 twin daughters lives in Kyiv. I'm subscribed to her page. She talked about the scary nights in the capital, Russian drones flying over their apartment building, and then she immediately asks to help the front. And she shows how she and her friends pack warm clothes for the military into cars. I told my older German friend, whom I call Miss Marple, how incredible Ukrainians are, how strong they are inside, and how they know how to joke when things are tough. I tell her Ukrainians are impossible to beat. She responds with a strange phrase. I translate this phrase as only the strong can laugh in the basement. This is 100% about Ukrainians. This morning, a woman named Natalia wrote, "It's so hot outside, -7. Thank you. Her house has been without light and heat for several days. She's supported by Natalia, who says, here I am running to work and thinking the same thing. It's getting warmer outside.
Think Theory Radio, Saturdays at 6 p.m. You're listening to Hal Sparks' radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Hundreds of thousands of people, utility workers, energy workers, rescuers, salespeople, drivers, bakers, nurses, entrepreneurs, and other go to work in Kyiv, Kharkiv, Odessa, Zaporizhzhia, and Lviv. Many people have no heat or light in their homes, and the Russian Federation attacks Ukrainian cities with drones and missiles every day. But Ukrainians, despite the shelling, the cold, and the insane fatigue, are doing everything they can to keep Ukraine alive.
Yeah.
There's
multiple videos out there of so you got to understand Kiev is made up, especially as you get further away from the center, of these very Soviet large, 20, 25 story buildings. And they're all kind of like, there are 4 of them in a communal area. And that was kind of how the Soviet Union built their housing in large cities. And so these things still exist. And we're starting to see all these videos come out of like when they don't have power, and when they don't, they go down into the courtyard, the communal courtyard, and they have barbecues.
Right.
They light a fire so you get warmth.
Mm-hmm.
They
eat together. Right.
And they eat together and they dance and they sing and they try to keep their spirits up and keep warm and keep their bodies moving and things like that. But more than anything else, it's communal.
Yeah.
It's a sense of community. It's a sense of like, we're going to stand together. And that article is 100% right. One thing the Russians just can't seem to get through their heads is that they're never going to acquiesce.
Right.
They're never going to bend the knee to Moscow again. And they'll stand by one another no matter what. I saw a video, of course, I watch all these Telegram channels and I'm subscribed to all this stuff. I saw a video today of a woman in Kharkiv, a young woman in Kharkiv who, is going through much of what we're going through here in Kiev. No water, no power, no heating. And they're closer to the line, so they're getting hit sometimes much harder than we are, although it does seem like Moscow is focusing on us currently.
Right.
But she's out in Kharkiv, and she's holding up a thermos, and she's like, I'm going to keep putting hot water in this. I'll make a tea. I'll put on clothes. I don't care. But I'm never going to live under your flag again. Never. There's nothing you can do. I will do everything. You can deprive me of almost everything, and I will still deny your flag.
Right.
And that's the general attitude in Ukraine. So, they're not being broken. The fleeing from the city and the people who are starting to move around to get away from areas that are subject to the elements because there's no power. That is a very real thing, but that is absolutely 100% not an indication of a lack of fortitude or strength or anything like that. They will come back in spring. They'll rebuild. They'll, if their buildings were damaged, they'll rebuild it. That article's right. They can't be broken. And this is about the most difficult winter that we have been through here.
Right.
And they're just not going to give up. They're not. So
let's
it's
grab
tragic, but
but it's also inspiring. And I think we could take a lot of, as much as Trump is trying to take his pages out of Putin's book, we can take a page out of the Ukrainians' book in that, we can do the big things and the little things. We can preserve our democracy and care for those that are targeted by this administration. Johnny, I'm sure we have questions, so let's get to some right away.
This one's from Edward Bremen. Can you ask Philip if Russia has burned through 70% of their gold reserves, and are manufacture dates on Russian missiles hitting Kiev now in December 2025?
First, we've heard lots of reports that they've burned through their gold reserve. I'm not an economist, and Russians lie, so we have no way of knowing 100% whether or not that's true. But they have obviously depleted some of their reserves. To what extent is it 70%? I don't know, but they've obviously been selling off a lot of their reserves because they have no other source of income. And then the other question was something about hitting Kiev. The second part of that question, Johnny, was about hitting Kiev.
Are the manufacture dates on Russian missiles hitting Kiev now in December 2025?
I mean, the Russian goal is to produce 1,000 drones a day.
Right.
They are most likely close to that goal. The drone factories, especially for the Shahed, are in the Far East. Very difficult for Ukraine to hit, although not impossible. They've done it. And they've also hit airfields recently as well. Airfields where planes that drop, glide bombs, these bombs that they do it in Russian airspace, but it glides into Ukrainian and hits targets here. So the Ukrainians have hit a couple of airfields where those planes are located. But whether or not they're reaching their capacity, their stated goal of 1,000 drones a day, I simply can't attest to. What I can say is, we're getting pounded here. We're absolutely getting pounded.
In terms of the gold stuff, I want to touch on one thing that sticks out to me. Is that I noticed this wave of buy gold stuff that happens on right-wing channels especially, but it occasionally drifts over to our side of the aisle, Noble Gold and all this stuff that you hear about, buying and investing in gold. One of the reasons why Russia has, is able to sell off their gold stores and help support the war effort is because the price of gold remains high. And so, and this idea that the dollar will be weak or will crash or will go away and gold is your only way to hedge against this and this kind of stuff is a right-wing talking point. And I would argue there is much a push for this kind of sales pitch amongst the right wing to artificially inflate the price of gold during these times to give them this kind of the prepper energy around it. That Russia is behind a decent amount of it. That they push for a rise in the value of gold when they're selling it, and then they will remove those ads and remove whatever pressure from these companies to sell more gold and this kind of stuff to drive the price down when they need to buy some. So they'll create their own dip in the gold market through their pressure on right-wing media outlets selling the stuff, because there are tons of ways to buy and sell precious metals online, but the companies that the right-wingers specifically sell I would argue are largely backed by or were created by or are supported by the Russians and maybe even to some degree the Chinese, but the Russians specifically. That these companies get this, that's their gig. Like, here's some ad dollars. We'll just give it to you in the same way that they paid Donald Trump's loans through Deutsche Bank. They'll artificially support the ad campaigns on these things to drive the price of oil or of gold up temporarily so that they can sell it, and then it drops back down. They've been pushing this for like the last little bit. So every time they do one of these purges where they sell a bunch of gold, it is preceded by this run of maybe 3 to 4 months of gold being the primary ad campaign on right-wing media. And then it goes away. Then they evaporate for about 6 to 8 months. It's something else. They're selling, drinks and other stuff, whatever they're like AGI, or AG1, the green drink and that kind of stuff. That's what they'll shift to. But it always seems to be preceded by a rise in right-wingers going, the dollar's weak. You better buy some gold. Jimmy Dore does it. Megyn Kelly does it. Bill O'Reilly does it. Glenn Beck does it. And the timing is very hinky, just for the record. There's no way I could prove otherwise because of the opaqueness of it, and that's what makes my radar go up more than anything else, is just how dark that entire world is. But the timing is incredibly hinky. Let's grab another one, Johnny.
Yeah, so this is from Connie Kelly. How does Ukraine see the pivot to Zircon missiles recently? Does it signal that Putin is getting more desperate?
I mean, you're using a sledgehammer to kill a fly.
Yeah.
It's not sustainable. Is it an indication that they're running out of other ammunition? I mean, potentially, sure. But again, I mean, their primary weapons that they use against us are the Shaheeds and the glide bombs. Those are their and then there are there's the Zircon, but there's also another couple of missile systems that they use, kind of medium range missile systems that they use as well. So I don't think they're running low on missiles. I really don't. They don't have an infinite supply, but I think they have enough to go for quite some time more, certainly through the winter and into the rest of 2026. And then we'll see. I don't know. Again, they can't resupply an awful lot of the more sophisticated weapons. They can't resupply. But they can build a lot of dumb stuff.
Right, and there's a sign that a lot of that, not obviously the Shahed drones, but the other missiles and stuff come from Belarus. 80% of what the Russians use in like military resupply has come from Belarus. This big talk about them getting a lot of stuff from China and the like is by and large garbage and has been shrinking. What they did get initially, they've gotten less and less of from China as it deals with its own problems. And the fact that they're relying on Belarus as the place to get it shows that they don't have an infinite supply, and that the manufacturing base is getting smaller and smaller. The idea that Russia itself should have to rely, especially since it's technically on a war footing right now, would rely on 80% of its materials coming from Belarus, from the Belarus region anyways. And that's obviously it's a sock puppet state and it might as well be part of Russia anyways. But that's a huge factor. It also speaks to maybe the damage that has been done because Ukraine can strike inside Russia and shut down power plants, gas plants, and military targets, but they're not firing into Belarus. So it's safer there to rely on that. But that speaks to how desperate they are as well. But yeah. So
they're certainly using a lot of ammunition right now, and I think they're going to continue to do it throughout the winter.
Agreed.
Because this might be one of their major pushes. I mean, this again. We've said that we've talked about this before. I think 2026 is going to be a very pivotal year for this war. Whether it concludes the war or not, I don't know. But I think it's going to be decisive, and both sides are kind of, they're trying to make it through this next year, and for different factors and different reasons. But this is going to be a pivotal year.
It's also when, it's one of those things when your runners are getting tired in a game, you start using passes because you're having a Hail Mary in this situation. And Russia is very much running out of people for their meat wave approach. So they're increasingly getting more desperate. This is why Tucker Carlson had that dude on who's saying that they're going to nuke Berlin and London. And it's just like, come on, man. But they roll this one out every so often as a way to pressure Trump, I think, more than anything, because he takes them at their word, which is just goofy. But Ukraine has also just ordered 18, what are they called? 18 Iris-T air defense systems from Germany, from Deal. So they're going to, and those will arrive basically in the next month and a half, as spring is starting to break. And that's when the airplanes will start flying again. That's, from Russia to some degree. And it will also help them strike missiles that would come into the country. And so Russia's trying to do as much damage before those things arrive as well, because they know Ukraine has been able to order a lot of systems, but that won't be available for the next 2-3 months. And while they're waiting on those things, they're trying to do as much, I think emotional, psychological, and civilian damage as they can. Let's take a break. We'll be back right after this. Don't forget to subscribe to On the Edge, which is Phil's show on YouTube. And then, of course, that's at his YouTube site, Philip Ittner, 1 L, 2 T's, and Ittner. Johnny Million, of course, is streaming after today's show at It's Johnny Million on both Twitch and YouTube. We're going to rate him from our channel, so if you're in the chat, hang around for that. And then we'll be back right after this. Yeah. I got to say, Trump is running into the same rake that Putin's running into. Yeah.
In what sense?
By cribbing from his notes, there's certain ground you can make, where you can scare people and use authoritarian power to make people cow for a certain amount of time. But it doesn't last long. After a while, people just go, well, if I'm going to die, I might as well die for something. And that's the part where you try to avoid, and when you're trying, especially when you want to take over a country as opposed to obliterate it.
Back in 20.
Or take over a city. Yeah. Thank you. Take over a city instead of obliterate it. That's the problem he runs into in Minneapolis. That's the problem he's running into, as far as threatening the National Guard and Army into the cities, is that it just, gins up more response. And it isn't just your opposition at that point. It's people like, whoa, I'm not comfortable.
I am happy, you are happy. Let us be happy together. Whether the weather is cloudy or sunny, I will always be your funny honey bunny. I am lucky, you are lucky. Let us get lucky together. Whether the weather is cloudy or breezy, I'll be there to say, hey, come on, let's take it easy. Because isn't it nice to have the friends that you do? And isn't it nice that the sky is so blue? And isn't it nice to say I love you? Chugga, chugga, choo, choo, woo, woo. I am smiling, you are smiling. Let us smile together. Whether the weather is cloudy or stormy, I will still be there in the morning. I'll be right by your side in the morning. I'll make you breakfast in the morning. I hope that you like cereal.
Yay! Hooray!
So Trump is not making any friends in the world, and that world is shrinking around him. And one of the things that he brags about is that he goes, you wouldn't have NATO if it wasn't for me. And you're like, okay, buddy. But the main reason why NATO rose from 2.5 to 5 is because they don't trust the United States anymore. And this is not necessarily a happy piece of news, but you have been talking for quite some time about how the Ukrainians don't view America as a reliable partner anymore. But CNN is reporting that Europe has finally realized it can no longer rely on the United States. And I would argue that this is temporary. That if we have God willing, a Democratic president, this will flip on a dime. And in the process of, if we get the House and the Senate, that dime will be relatively permanent, because we will no longer kind of have this, comedy naivete around what the Republicans intend to do if they seize power again. We have seen it in stark reality. We have seen the sort of the worst of what they can bring to bear under Donald Trump. But they have no one in their bench that has the same kind of cult-like control over Republicans in general. So once he's done, they're done. And they know it increasingly. So sort of the happy ending aspect of this is that I agree that Europe cannot count on us right now because of Donald Trump, but not because of the American people or the opinions of the American people. 70% support Ukraine. There is only a remnant of the right wing that is even bothering to make the case against Ukraine in this situation or playing up Vladimir Putin. And again, all three of these guys, Trump, Putin, and Xi, all are facing, the rake of mortality that they will eventually step on, and it's going to come quickly in that regard. I think
that there's going to have to be some rebuilding of fences and relationships.
I agree.
I don't think it is going to turn on a dime, but I do agree with you that it's possible to return to a place where we are partners and friends and allies.
Yes.
But I also think, and this was a discussion actually even before Trump and before the Ukraine war. I've lived in Europe for the better part of the last 3 decades, and there has often been a call for a independent European security force that could be umbrellaed into NATO, but there has long been talk in Brussels of we need to have our own military because we cannot
Hence the
always
5%, right? That's why I think that really was a self-preservation decision, and Trump accidentally extended the power and viability of NATO by being so ham-handed and Putin-friendly. And I think that's one of the things we can count on with this administration in every theater. And in some cases, they will try to use their overreach as a provocation in the same way that, like I brought up with Putin and the bombings of the apartment buildings, that they will use this stuff as an excuse. Trump thinks he's going to use the Insurrection Act and all these kind of things to try and quell stuff in the United States. But there is a limited appetite, not just on our side, which is, opposed to it directly, from a Democrat standpoint, but there's a limited appetite for that on the Republican side as well. The federal government, stomping on states' rights, for as much as they might seem like they're okay with it under Donald Trump, there's a lot of chafing at the seams, and this is why Mike Johnson is having such a hard time keeping his coalition in line, especially on things like signing off on the discharge petition on Epstein and even on the healthcare vote. So I do think you're right. Yeah, go ahead.
I think internally within Europe, the Union stands strong. The alliance internally within Europe stands strong. And also, one only needs to look at Canada to realize this will remain a transatlantic relationship.
Yes. Agreed.
Even if it's going to take some time for the United States to get back in good graces and repair the damage that's been done, it is still going to be transatlantic. And that means that there is still going to be support from Europe that will have a partner on the other side of the ocean who can support them should this turn into a hot war with Russia.
Exactly.
Which is entirely possible.
Yes.
But it will still be transatlantic.
Agreed. Let's grab a couple more questions before we run out of time. And I want to remind everybody, by the way, I'm doing the Indivisible fundraiser next week in Chicago at Dino's in Elk Grove Village. It's a all-star lineup, myself included, and hopefully I can drag Johnny Million down there because people are going to want to say hi to him and give him a hug. And if we could get Phil there, we would too.
And if I could, you want to do me remote, bring it in remotely, then I'm happy to do it. But also, in addition to that, I'll take the opportunity to say I'm working with Malcolm Nance and Lev Parnas on a GoFundMe to get generators to bring in here. Very easy to find on any of Lev or Malcolm or my socials. It is really just generators for Ukraine and a GoFundMe. but we're trying to get right now generators in here as quickly as possible. And I have taken temporary custody of one of these generators, and if it's found that it's needed elsewhere, then so be it. But we are going to start being able to produce shows again because one of the generators is going to be at our studio.
Right.
So and also I'll be supporting local journalists by giving them workspace as stuff as well. So we've got one generator at our studio that'll help us fight the information war, which we all agree at Generators for Ukraine is a pretty important task, as well as keeping people warm and the rest of it. So
exactly. Awesome. Let's grab another couple questions if we can, Johnny.
Okay, so this is from Luis for Philip. What are the chances that Ukraine has a squad whose only target is Putin?
Yeah, sure. We know that there have been at least 6 Russian squads that have been in Ukraine trying to kill Zelensky. So, and the head of, well, he's not the head of intelligence anymore. I think his title is now chief of staff, but Budanov, General Budanov who was formerly the head of Ukraine's intelligence agency. Military intelligence agency, is a crafty man. So I think if they wanted to assassinate Putin, it's entirely possible that they would allocate resources to that. And I think it's entirely possible. The other problem, though, and this is kind of common knowledge, is that you got to figure out who's the real Putin.
Right.
There are those who think that Putin is in a bunker 24/7.
Yeah,
and has not seen the light of day in years, potentially since COVID. And so you got to find him. You got to find the real one. And
right.
And assassinating Putin's not really the problem.
Yeah.
It's he
certainly not the
because,
solution. Yeah, right. But I get what you're saying. Yeah.
And if he suddenly disappears violently because of Ukrainian action, it might be counterproductive. So I don't know if they're prioritizing that, but I wouldn't be terribly surprised if they. And the whole rumor, by the way, that happened a couple of weeks ago about a drone or something hitting his private residence, he wasn't even there. Ukrainian intelligence knew he wasn't there. I don't think that was a real assassination attempt. So I don't think they're prioritizing it.
Right.
But I wouldn't, never say never.
Yeah, and for the record, and related to Davos, Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff and them met with Vladimir Putin for 4 hours this last Thursday to discuss the U.S. plan to end the war in Ukraine. And again, whether they met the real one or not is hilarious. But the reality is it went nowhere because the follow-up, was like still this kind of like, well, we're talking, and like after a 4-hour meeting that you can't come out of there with some concrete movement. And also, by the way, bombs were hitting Ukraine all during that meeting as a way of just kind of bum rushing this. This is the exact same thing we ran into with Netanyahu. Netanyahu agreed to basically Biden's peace plan for Gaza and Israel, but he wanted to bomb for 10 more months. That's all. He just wanted to obliterate big chunks of the area, period. And so he just wouldn't agree to it until he was done with the bigger strike. And the same thing is true with Putin, although I don't think he'll ever give up on it. I really don't. I don't think he can. I don't think he can afford to.
No, and I don't think he'll ever get to a place where he can actually stop.
Right.
Because he can't. The Russians, and I've said this before, the Russians do not have the capacity to achieve their strategic goals, which is to put a friendly government in Kiev and to take control of the Black Sea by taking dominion of the northern bank, which includes Odessa. They don't have the manpower. They don't have the means to take Odessa, much less Kiev. And they cannot install a puppet government here. There'll be a partisan war. There'll be guerrilla warfare. No government imposed by Moscow will be accepted here.
Right.
these two things are not possible for them to achieve.
Yeah.
And the
So
one thing,
Putin cannot
yeah,
stop, and he can't keep going.
he also said they must get the entire Donbass region, even the areas they have not gotten. And that's never going to happen. Don't forget, subscribe to On the Edge and check out new shows when they're able to make them. But help build up those numbers. Johnny Million will be live streaming after the show, so we're going to raid him from our YouTube and Twitch channels. I will be in Chicago next week at Dino's in Elk Grove Village for the Indivisible fundraiser doing stand-up, and I'm very excited to do it.
Studio together.
That's right. We're going to be live in studio next week. It'll be so much easier. All right, we hope. Except for Devin. It'll be much harder for him. We'll be back next week. All right. Like, subscribe, give a thumbs up, support the show. Patreon.com/HalSparks.
Good to see you, Phil.
Good to see you, Johnny. Have a good session.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to bail to get ready.
Absolutely.
Next week, guys.
Bug out. Thank you so much. All right.
Thank you, Chicago.
I'll see you guys later. Thank you, Phil. Be safe. And
talk to you. We'll talk on Wednesday.
Yeah, please.
All right.
Where we can both swear. All right. Awesome.
And hopefully the generator will be up by then.
Oh, good. Okay, great. All right. Well, be safe and stay warm, and you're awesome, and everybody in the chat room loves you and wants you to be safe. Okay. You can see that go by. Yeah. And chat room, thank you guys for your patience yesterday when I didn't do an afternoon show. There was signal-wise, it was the worst it's ever been at one of the convention floors. It was crazy. I think it was all the electronics, but just nothing. And then of course they did the tribute for my dad, and it was very emotional. So I had already given you guys that in the morning, so I don't think we needed any more of that from me. Again, not out of shame or anything, just some stuff is personal, I guess. How your videos of your dad were beautiful. Thank you. And there's another one coming. The funeral will be in June because of how long it's going to take to make his monument. And then we're doing the shoot in, I'm going to bring a little hotspot thing that should help me get a signal even in Friendship, Indiana, so that I can show everybody what happened at that, because we're shooting off some of my dad's ashes at the muzzleloading shoot. So yeah, just a lot. So anyways, I love you guys and I appreciate you more than you know. And we'll hang around for a little bit when for Johnny Million, and hopefully you guys will jump over to his show and enjoy it. And again, keep your calmer, smarter, more resilient nature about you. Do not let them drive you to the outrage machine, because that's what they want out of you. They don't want you clear-headed. They don't want you with all your wits about you. That's my caveat for the day. So take care of yourselves and take care of somebody else. Thank you guys so much for your support today. Oh look, it shows the bit donors now. Thank you guys.
This is some bullshit.
Oh, and if a maggot's been in the chat room or any of that kind of stuff, please hit the thumbs down on your way out. We appreciate your eyeballs. And remember the thing about time, no refunds.